Uh-oh, that don't look good. Ooh, ouch. Yeah, that sucked. That was me. And the goal for this video is going to be to teach you all how to not get locked down in one shot like that. Maybe even start doing the one-shotting yourself. Let's get into it. Alright, I'm Aidail, and I'd like to formally welcome you to my channel. Now, I've been living, eating, and breathing PvP in Lost Ark, and if there's one thing I learned throughout diving into this, it's that the PvP system is like a chess match that completely revolves around the crowd control system in this game. Now, I'm absolutely stoked for the start of the first ranked PvP season in the Western version of this game. If you're anything like me, you're going to want to climb as high as you possibly can. To do that, we're going to need to know the CC system like the back of our hands. If you're a new player, we're going to be going over everything there is. Tier 1, 2, 3 immunities, and if you're a veteran player, we're also going to be diving into some of the complex systems that, I'll be honest, they're hard as hell to find any info about. Those systems include juggle limits, hard CC timer, scales, and the 30% health rule. So if any of that sounded unfamiliar, you might want to stick around to the end of this video for us to cover those topics. If you're really itching to get out there and you just want your screenshot of the CC chart, here it is. I'll even smile for you. Alright, with that out of the way, let's break down this crowd control chart. We've got 3 tiers starting from weakest to strongest, 1, 2, and 3. There's a solid line dividing each tier. You'll notice a dotted line in tier 1. That's because tier 1's kind of the most complicated. It has too many tiers within itself. We'll dive into that later. What I want you to see is we got crowd control on the left and we have immunity on the right. Here's the key here. An immunity of one tier will always beat a CC of the same tier. That's why I staggered them the way I do. So take push immunity and push, for example. Push immunity will always beat push. Not only will an immunity beat the equivalent tier of CC, but an immunity will also beat every CC of lower tiers as well. Now, in the reverse, if you take push, push will beat all of the immunities below that. So push will beat paralysis and push will beat auto attacking. So each time you go up, that's how the system works. Alright, I lied. I want to dive into tier 1 right off the bat. So, tier 1's called paralysis. And paralysis sounds really bad, but in this game, it's not. What I want you to think of paralysis as is, say you're a kid on the playground. And you're running along and someone knees you in the leg and your leg goes numb for a sec. Your leg's paralyzed. You got a dead leg. It quickly comes back and you can keep running again. That's it. That's all paralysis is in Lost Ark. It stops your movement temporarily. So, how do we distinguish between soft paralysis and hard paralysis? Soft paralysis is applied by literally almost every single attack in the game, including auto attacks. There are very few abilities that do not apply soft paralysis, and what I've found is it's usually a movement ability that won't apply it. So for instance, Deathblade's little spin cutter, that thing does not apply soft paralysis, but nearly everything else does. If you want to find out if your ability's applied or not, you'll have to test it yourself. So how do we counter soft paralysis? You literally do anything other than stand still and move. An auto attack or cast literally any ability, and it will counter the soft paralysis. Now moving up to hard paralysis. Hard paralysis is any ability that says it applies paralysis. And now to counter that, obviously we pick up an ability that says it has paralysis immunity. You'll find paralysis immunity in a lot of your skill descriptions, but you can also find them in your tripods for those skills. So you'll have to look through your tripods. Sometimes, most oftentimes from what I've seen, the tripod will be called Naively Honest, but that's not always the case. So look through your skills and see what applies. Alright, moving on to tier 2. Tier 2 is called push. How I want you to think of it is any ability that says that it forcefully moves somebody, whether that's push, pull, knock up, knock down, or knock away, or push away. Any ability that forcefully moves you. Pretty cut and dry. The way that you beat push is with push immunity, and as we said before, any immunities of a higher tier. Alright, now for tier 3. When you're setting up your skill's not gonna say that it applies tier 3 hard crowd control. It's just gonna say that it applies a status effect, and there's a lot of status effects. So how I want you to think about this is think about any status effect that if it was applied to a person in real life, it'd be really freaking bad. So we got fainting, freezing, incarceration, pest, Petrify, Sleep, Stunned, Earthquake, Electrocute, and Fear. Now, I haven't seen all of these in the game, but I have heard some of the other content creators that covered the game when it was in RU and KR. So I'm assuming that those ones that we haven't seen are coming from other classes. Regardless, the ability is going to say that it does something like that. It usually applies for 1 to 2 seconds, okay? The way that you counter hard CC is with all immunity. Now, all immunity, it gets complicated. The easiest way to apply all immunity to yourself is with your dodge, and if you are knocked down, your roll to get up. Alright, now let's get into the most complicated part of this system, and it's what I like to call diminishing returns. And as I said before, there's 4 categories in this. We'll start with the first one, which is the 4 juggle limit. How this works is if you get hit with 4 separate abilities that apply the push CC, you will get all immunity. So say they're knockups. If you get hit with 4 knockups in a row, on the 4th knockup, your character will start to glow and you'll have that all immunity applied to you. Now there are some classes, like Striker, they're the worst one, or the best, depending on which side of that you're on. But Strikers, they have abilities that have multiple knockups within a single ability. And as we said before, it's 4 separate abilities that you have to get hit with before you get the immunity. So a Striker, because their ability hits multiple times, they might be able to juggle you like 12 times before that immunity applies. So try to remember 4 separate abilities for all immunity. Moving on, we got the hard CC timer. Now when you get hit with a hard CC, you'll notice a barrier around your character. It's not a solid barrier, it's like this little shifting white barrier. And you'll also notice a blue bar over your head. That blue bar is a 7-second timer that's counting down for you to see. Now, what that does is it grants you hard CC immunity only. It does not work like the rest of the CC chart. It's specifically only for hard CC. So if you get hard CC'd and that applies, you can still get knocked up while you have that immunity. You can still get paralyzed. You just can't get hard CC'd. Next one is the scales. The scales apply when you're being paralyzed for 4 seconds or more. So if someone's sitting there auto attacking you and they're just holding down their button and they're keeping on auto attacking you, on the 4th second tick, you will have a scale applied above your character's little yellow circle. Now, after you get the scales icon over your head, you get knocked onto the ground. And once your back hits the ground, all immunity will apply to you for 1.5 seconds. Now, people can play around with that, and they can knock you in the air right as the 4 seconds about to hit. The scales might apply while your character's floating in the air. The all immunity will not apply until your character comes back and their back hits the ground. The final one is the 30% health rule. This one I actually found by accident, dueling with a buddy that was way higher item level than me. But if you get hit with an ability that takes at least 30% of your health away, you will have all immunity applied for like 1.5 seconds again, I believe. So there's your diminishing returns, and there's a lot to unpack there, but when you start to get an understanding of all that, you can start to see how you could play with a CC chain. You know, maybe you hold someone down auto attacking and keep them paralyzed for 3 seconds, and before that 4-second ticks, you hit them with a knockup, and therefore extending your CC chain past 4 seconds. Or maybe you're knocking them up 3 times and then hitting them with a stun. A lot of different ways that you can make your CC chain last longer so that you can hopefully get someone's health just totally tanked down to 0. So look at your abilities, figure out what abilities play off of each other well, and figure out how you can get those long CC chains going. Alright, last thing I want to go over is your combat skill page. Now when you're highlighting through your abilities in there, I want you to be looking at the orange text. You're looking for abilities that say that they stagger, which is paralysis, or things that say that they give you paralysis immunity. Most of your push immunities are going to be in your tripods. You're also going to find some paralysis immunities in your tripods. What paralysis usually looks like in your tripod is a node called Naively Honest. What your push immunity usually looks like is a node called Tenacity. Now, pro tip for you, sometimes your third tripod has things like push immunity baked into it, but it won't say Tenacity. You'll literally have to read all the text in it to see that it says grants push immunity. So make sure you look through everything real close. Now, another important tip, remember when you're going through this, you're looking at all the PvE versions of these abilities. Even if you're in your book of coordination, it's still the PvE version. If you want to see the PvP version, you have to highlight the ability and hold Alt. When you do that, you'll notice things like your damage numbers change. Sometimes you'll lose stagger, or you'll lose paralysis immunity. Sometimes your cooldown goes up, and sometimes even your stun duration will go down. So make sure you're looking at the PvP version. Now, another thing to note, you can't just hold Alt and scroll through. Every time you go to the next ability, it will kick back to the PvE version, even though you're still holding Alt. It's a pain in the ass, I know. So highlight each ability, hold Alt. Move to the next ability, hold Alt again. Make sure you go through all your abilities with a fine-tooth comb so that you really understand what you're working with, so that you can start to push your ranking up, because let's be honest, that's what we're all here for. Alright, that was a lot to work through. Thank you for sticking it out to the end with me. If you found value in the video, please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm. If you have friends that you think could benefit from the video, send it their way. I've got a new channel and I'm trying to grow. We plan on cranking out Lost Ark content here. The next video you can expect out of me is how to tailor a meta PvP build specifically to your playstyle. So be on the lookout for that. I am going to be a little bit more PvP focused, but I am going to cover everything. So if you want to see more from me, be sure to subscribe. Well, all my relevant links are down below. Be sure to check them out. Follow me on the socials, and I wish you well. See you in the next one.